What are you doing, Maya? That guy's a biker. You trying to get yourself fired? Mike's voice sliced through the garage like a bad socket wrench grinding against metal. Maya Williams didn't flinch. She kept walking steadily, purposefully toward the man standing beside the stalled Harley. Its chrome was scuffed, the paint chipped, and the engine let off a weak tick with each passing second. But what caught her eye wasn't the bike. It was the man. His boots were caked in dried mud, jeans torn at one knee. His leather jacket was sun-bleached and stiff at the shoulders, the patch on the back unmistakable. Hell's Angels. Tattoos climbed his neck like cracked vines, and gray hair clung to his temples, soaked in sweat. But it wasn't the ink or the emblem that made people back away. It was the look in his eyes. Panicked, wild, like he was trying to keep it together and failing. "Ma'am," he said as she approached, voice tight and shaking. "I'm not looking for trouble. My bike had just died 2 blocks down. I pushed it here. My daughter, she's at Uptown General. Internal bleeding. She's 8. She's in surgery right now. I gotta get to her. Please." He wiped his hands on his jeans as if trying to get the desperation off them. At the counter, the receptionist Kim barely glanced up. "No walk-ins without a ticket," she said, chewing gum like he was wasting her oxygen. "I said it's an emergency," he replied, louder now, breath-catching. "I don't need a full workup. I just need her to start. I'll pay." "Sir," Kim replied, snapping her gum, "everyone here's got something important to do." Behind her, 2 customers shifted away from the man like he carried disease. One murmured to the other, "Figures. Biker shows up looking like that." Another tech mic again leaned toward Jonas. "Probably high. You see his hands shaking?" Maya didn't wait. She stepped forward, grabbed a rag off the bench, and moved toward the bike. "I just want to see what's wrong," she said. "You don't need to." Derek's voice shot across the floor like a crack of thunder. The manager stepped out of his office, his foam cup steaming. His jaw was clenched, the muscles at his temple twitching. "Maya, I'm only going to say this once. No ticket, no work. You touch that bike, and you're on your own." "He's not asking for a rebuild," Maya said, her voice calm. "He's asking for help." "We're not in the business of helping," Derek snapped. "We're in the business of protocol." The biker looked like he wanted to disappear, his face flushed red under the grime, hands twitching at his sides. He started to back away. "Forget it," he mumbled. "I'll push it somewhere else." "No, you won't," Maya said, crouching beside the bike. She popped open the ignition panel, fingers moving quick and precise. "This won't take long." "Maya," Derek shouted, tossing his cup into the trash. "That's it. You're fired." Silence. The garage froze. Even the air compressor in the back seemed to suck its breath in. Maya stood slowly, wiping her hands on the rag tucked into her belt. She didn't look at Derek. She looked at the biker. He stared at her, wide-eyed, overwhelmed. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to get you in trouble." She shook her head. "Don't be. It's not your fault they don't see you. If you also feel the weight of that injustice, give Maya a like. And don't forget to leave a comment letting us know where you're watching this from. Who knows? Someone nearby might be watching this story with you." And with that, she turned, walked through the gauntlet of silence and sideways glances, and pushed open the front door. The Bronx air was cold, sharp, and honest. It hit her like a slap and woke something up. Behind her, the Harley roared to life. It sputtered once, then caught with a low growl. The man didn't say anything. But Maya knew. He'd make it to his daughter. The bike had fight left in it. So did she. The silence clung to Maya long after the door of AutoPro slammed shut behind her. The noise of the Bronx street horns blaring, footsteps, a siren somewhere uptown rushed in to fill the void, but it couldn't quiet the ringing in her ears. Her fingers still smelled of grease and hot metal. She pulled her hoodie tighter around her jumpsuit and started walking, unsure where she was going, only that she couldn't stay still. By the time she reached the train station 2 blocks down, the adrenaline had worn off, and her body ached with the heaviness of what had just happened. Fired. Just like that. 3 years of showing up early, staying late, doing the grunt work no one else wanted gone in one sentence. She sat on the bench across from the platform, the wooden slats digging into her spine. She thought of calling her mom. But what could she say? "Hey Ma, remember that job keeping a roof over our heads and insulin in the fridge? Yeah, it's gone. Because I helped a guy. Oh. Instead, Maya stared at the ad plastered across the train wall, glossy poster of a vacation in Palm Springs, all sand and perfect teeth. It felt like a joke. The next morning, she woke early out of habit, laced up her boots, then stopped halfway. There was nowhere to go. Still, she packed her tools. Old habits were hard to kill. Her first stop was a garage over on 161st and Jerome, a place she'd done freelance brake work for 2 summers ago. The manager remembered her, smiled, listened, but when she mentioned where she used to work and why she left, his face changed. He nodded politely and told her they'd call if anything opened up. By lunchtime, she'd visited 3 other shops. One said they weren't hiring. Another said she didn't fit their team culture. The last one looked her up and down and asked, "You sure you're not better off doing customer service?" Maya didn't answer. She just turned and left. It wasn't just the firing that stung. It was the fact that no one cared to hear why. No one cared that a man had walked into that garage practically begging for help, and she'd answered. All they saw was a woman who broke the rules. By late afternoon, she found herself sitting on the steps of her apartment building, watching the sunlight stretch long across the street. She still hadn't told her mother. The shame clung to her chest like a wet shirt. Inside, the apartment smelled faintly of Vicks and slow-cooked collard greens. Her mother sat by the window, knitting half-heartedly, glasses low on her nose. "You're home early," her mother said, not looking up. Maya nodded. She dropped her tool bag by the door, forcing a neutral tone. "Yeah, I quit." Her mother stopped knitting, looked at her, quiet. "You quit?" Maya swallowed. A man needed help. His daughter was hurt. No one else would touch his bike. "I fixed it. Derek fired me on the spot." Silence filled the room. Her mother's voice, when it came, was soft. "Did you do what was right?" Maya nodded, eyes stinging. "Then don't let a paycheck shame you." It was the first kindness she'd received all day, and it broke her. Maya turned away, biting the inside of her cheek to keep from crying. That night, she sat at the kitchen table long after her mom had gone to bed. Her phone buzzed with notifications, mostly job boards, spam, and a reminder to pay the gas bill. One message stood out. A number she didn't recognize. Just 3 words. "You still good?" No name. But she knew who it was. The biker. She didn't answer. The next day, she visited 2 more shops. One flat out told her they didn't hire troublemakers. Another handed her a clipboard and said they'd be in touch, though the way they avoided eye contact told her everything. By evening, she found herself walking without thinking. Her boots took her back to Auto Pro out of some combination of habit and stubbornness. She stood across the street, staring at the big roll-up doors and the glow of fluorescence inside. They were still open. Life had moved on without her, like she never existed. A figure stepped out from the alley beside the building. It was him. He looked different in the daylight. Less like a biker, more like a man who'd seen too much. He had a paper bag in one hand and a coffee in the other. When he saw her, he stopped. "I figured I'd find you here," he said. Maya folded her arms, wary. "You following me now?" He shook his head. "Just came by to check if you were okay." She said nothing. "I didn't mean for you to lose your job," he added, stepping closer. "I know." He extended the coffee. "It's black, no sugar." She took it, not because she wanted it, but because it felt easier than arguing. He nodded at the garage. "They treat you like that often?" "Only when I breathe," she said, deadpan. He chuckled, then sobered. "My name's Ryder, by the way." She looked at him fully now. "Maya." A beat passed. Ryder looked down the block. "I told my brother what happened." She frowned. "Why would your brother care?" He glanced at her. "Because he owns that garage. Well, owns the whole chain. Auto Pro." Maya froze. "You helped the wrong guy, or maybe the right one," he said. "Either way, I wasn't going to let it go." He started to walk away, then turned back. "You ever need a hand or a chance, just call." He tucked something into her pocket. A business card. Plain. No logos, just a name and number. Then he was gone. Maya stood in the growing dark, coffee cooling in her hands, card pressing warm against her thigh. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time since that door slammed behind her, It felt like the world might still have one foot open. The next morning, Maya sat at the kitchen table nursing the cold coffee Ryder had given her. It tasted bitter and burnt, but she drank it anyway. Her mother had left early for her clinic appointment, and the apartment felt oddly quiet without her television murmuring in the background. Maya opened her phone, rereading the name on the business card. Ryder Ellison. Below it, a number. No title, no company logo. Just that plain, stubborn name, like a man who didn't want to explain who he was, but still insisted on being remembered. She hadn't called. She didn't plan to. But at exactly 9:14 a.m., her phone rang. A strange number. She almost let it go to voicemail, but something tugged at her. "Hello? Miss Williams?" A woman's voice. Crisp, formal. "This is Lauren from the Auto Pro corporate office. Our executive director would like to schedule a meeting with you, at your convenience." Maya blinked. What? "Mr. Ellison requested you come in today, if possible." Her breath caught. "Ellison?" "Yes, ma'am. The CEO." She almost laughed, but it came out as a choked cough instead. I'm not sure why he'd want to meet. I believe it concerns a recent incident at our Bronx location. We'll send a car if that helps." Maya hesitated, heart thudding. "What floor?" 18th, the voice replied. "Downtown headquarters, Midtown Manhattan." At 11 a.m., Maya stood in front of a glass tower that shimmered like ambition. The Auto Pro logo stretched tall above the revolving doors, proud and sterile. She wore her best jeans, a navy sweater, and the same boots she'd worn the day she got fired. They still had grease scuffed into the soles. Inside, everything smelled like leather and filtered air. A receptionist smiled at her too politely and handed her a badge. "Please take the elevator to the 18th floor. They're expecting you." The ride up felt longer than it was. The mirrored walls reflected back her tight jaw and uncertain eyes. She adjusted her collar once, twice, but it still felt wrong. When the elevator dinged, a glass door slid open to a waiting area bathed in natural light. Beyond it, an open office space with soft gray carpet and high-backed chairs that looked like they cost more than her entire apartment. "Maya?" a man's voice called. She turned. Ryder stood near a sleek glass conference room. Gone was the leather jacket and dirt-stained jeans. Today he wore a button-up rolled to his forearms and slacks that actually fit, but his stance was the same, shoulders firm, expression steady. "Didn't think I'd see you," he said. "I almost didn't come." He nodded. "Still glad you did." He opened the door and gestured for her to follow. The conference room was larger than the entire Bronx garage. At the far end sat a tall black man in his 50s, clean-shaven, sharp suit, watch that caught the sunlight just right. He stood when she entered. "Miss Williams, I'm Isaac Ellison, CEO." Maya shook his hand, her own slightly clammy. "Please have a seat." She sat across from him, Ryder to her right. "I've heard a lot about you in the last 48 hours, Ellison said. "And I'd like to hear it directly. No filters, no spin. Just, what happened?" Maya hesitated, then inhaled, and she told him about the man who came in desperate, about the silence in the room, about Kim and Derek and the way everyone looked at the biker like he was dirt, about how she stepped in and how she got fired. Ellison listened without interrupting, his fingers steepled in front of him, his jaw clenched only once when she described Derek's exact words. When she finished, there was a long silence. "I'm not asking for my job back," she added. "I just want you to know how your people run your shop." "Ugh." Ellison nodded slowly. "I appreciate your honesty and your restraint. Most people would have lit social media on fire by now." "I don't want attention," Maya said. "I want things to work better for the next girl who walks in there." Ryder smiled faintly beside her. Ellison leaned back. "Ryder is my older brother. He helped me build Auto Pro in the early days, before the franchise, before the corporate board. He was under a car before I ever held a wrench. He stepped away a few years ago, but he still matters to this company. So when I found out what happened," his voice trailed off, then sharpened. "I reviewed your file, Maya. You have the highest customer satisfaction rating of anyone in the Bronx branch. Not a single complaint. You work holidays. You take on the worst bays. You train 2 of the current techs who now pretend they outrank you." Maya blinked. She hadn't expected that. And you were fired for helping someone in distress. That is unacceptable. She sat a little straighter. Derek Reynolds was terminated this morning, Ellison said simply. Effective immediately. Maya stared. Wait, really? Ryder answered. Told you we'd handle it. Ellison opened a folder. We're offering you a promotion. Lead technician at the Bronx location. Full benefits. 15% raise. You'll manage the floor. You'll have final say on hires, shop standards, and conduct. Maya blinked hard. Why me? Because you already led by example, Ellison said. And because I want someone on that floor who doesn't wait to be told what's right. She looked down at the folder, at her own name in neat typeface. Something about it felt surreal. I need a minute, she whispered. Take all the time you need, Ellison replied. But she didn't need long. She looked up, locked eyes with both men, and nodded. Yes, she said. And this time, when she walked out of the office into the elevator, it wasn't as someone who had just lost everything. It was someone who was just beginning. Maya stepped out of the AutoPro tower with the folder clutched tight in her hand, its sharp edges pressing into her fingertips. The midday sun was brighter than she remembered, bouncing off glass and steel, casting long shadows across Midtown. She stood still for a moment near the curb, letting the noise of the city wash over her horns, voices, construction clatterand. Then she exhaled. Lead technician, a raise, her own team, her own rules. It didn't feel real. Not yet. She took the subway back to the Bronx, the folder tucked under her coat like something sacred. Her reflection in the window stared back at her, calm on the surface, but with fire behind the eyes. She wasn't just getting her job back. She was getting a seat at the table. And for the first time in her life, she wouldn't have to whisper to be heard. When she stepped off at 149th Street and walked the remaining 4 blocks to her building, she found her mother on the stoop, knitting needles in her lap, eyes squinting in the winter light. Well? Her mother asked without looking up. Maya lifted the folder and gave her a half smile. They offered me more than just the job back. Her mother raised an eyebrow. How much more? A new title, a raise, control over hiring, floor management. She hesitated, then added, they fired Derek. Her mother let out a slow breath and set the knitting aside. Good. That man's mouth was poison. Inside, Maya spread the documents out on the kitchen table, rereading every line, every term, just to be sure. She wasn't imagining it. This was real. Still, something gnawed at her. Something deeper than pride. Something closer to weight. She couldn't just go back and act like nothing happened. The next morning, she returned to the Bronx AutoPro location not as a visitor, not as the girl at Bay 4, but as the new lead tech. The reception area was quiet when she entered. Kim, the receptionist, blinked when she saw her. Can I help you? Then recognition settled on her face. Oh, Maya Gabe Apolitenod. Morning, Kim. Is Jonas in? Kim's mouth opened, then closed. I think he's in the back. Maya walked past her and headed straight for the garage floor. The air smelled like oil and old rubber, just as she remembered. Sparks popped from a welding station near the corner. Jonas stood hunched over an open engine, earbuds in, oblivious. She tapped his shoulder. He jumped, pulled out an earbud, and turned. Maya? He said, startled. In the flesh. He looked around nervously. Are you visiting? She shook her head. I'm not visiting, Jonas. I'm back. He stared. Wait, what? CEO brought me in. Official. I'm lead tech now. His eyes widened. Damn. That's incredible. She studied his reaction. Not condescending, just surprised. She could work with that. Listen, she said. I know how this shop works. The whispers, the looks, the assumptions. I'm not here to play that game. I'm here to change it. So if you're on board, great. If not, step aside. Jonas nodded slowly. I'm on board. By noon, word had spread. Some techs nodded respectfully. Others avoided her entirely. A few like Mike stood in a quiet corner, murmuring and watching. She didn't approach them. Not yet. Let them adjust. Let them stew. Later that day, she found an email waiting for her in her new company inbox. The subject line, Internal Equity Audit, Authorized Access. Attached were reports, long, cold documents, numbers, graphs, incident logs, She scrolled through them, each entry like a punch to the gut. One line caught her eye. Employee name, Maya Williams. Incident type, non-compliance. Action taken, immediate termination. Manager, D. Reynolds. She stared at it for a long time. They really had made her disappear with one line. That night, she sat on the fire escape outside her window with a notebook in her lap. She flipped it open and started writing. Not out of anger but out of clarity. She wrote about the day the biker came in. She wrote about the silence, the looks, the heat in her chest when she made her choice. And she wrote one line at the top of the page, circled in red. We don't see people like her. The next morning, she uploaded her first podcast episode. It was raw, unedited. Her voice, steady but personal, filled the space between breaths. This isn't about revenge, she said. This is about recognition. About what happens when you do the right thing and still get punished. This is about what we lose when we stop seeing each other as people. She hit publish before she could talk herself out of it. By evening, the episode had 7,000 plays. Comments poured in from auto workers, nurses, teachers, parents. I've been there. Thank you for saying this out loud. I thought I was alone. At Auto Pro headquarters, someone forwarded the episode to Isaac Ellison. He listened with the volume low, face unreadable, Ryder sitting across from him. She's not holding back, Ryder said. She shouldn't, Ellison replied. Ryder nodded. Then let's not waste this. Back in the Bronx, Maya's second day on the job ended with a call from corporate. They wanted to meet. Not about a promotion, not about policy, about something bigger, something that might rewrite the whole damn playbook. Maya hung up, heart pounding. Then she looked around the garage floor, at the smudged windows and stained walls and the men who now gave her just a little more space when she walked by. She didn't need their approval. She had her voice. And now, the world was starting to listen. It was strange how quickly a voice could travel. Within 48 hours, Maya's podcast episode had crossed state lines. A former welder in Ohio sent her a message saying he'd cried listening to her. A middle-aged black woman from Detroit said Maya had said what she'd always been afraid to. Someone in Idaho asked if she could turn it into a series. But Maya wasn't chasing virality. She just wanted truth to echo back into the places it had always been silenced. The garage hadn't said much about it. Not directly. But people started changing. Jonas stopped calling her boss with sarcastic air, and said it sincerely now. Kim had stopped snapping gum when Maya walked in, and even made coffee one morning black, no sugar. Then on Friday afternoon, something happened. A man in a gray blazer showed up around 3 p.m., clipboard in hand, smile too practiced to be genuine. He asked for Maya at the front. Kim called over the intercom, voice stiff. Maya, you've got, someone. She stepped out from under the lifted chassis of a Chevy and walked toward the front, wiping her hands on her coveralls. You looking for a service or... The man extended his hand. David Quinn, Corporate Affairs. Maya raised an eyebrow. Did I do something wrong? He chuckled lightly. Not at all, but Mr. Ellison would like to meet with you again. Tomorrow, conference room at HQ. Will. Maya glanced down at the clipboard. Is this about the podcast? I think it's about what comes after it, he replied. The next morning, the elevator doors slid open again on the 18th floor. She wasn't nervous this time, just clear-headed, focused. She wore the same boot-scuffed, stained, unapologetically real. Inside the conference room sat Isaac Ellison and Ryder. A third person was there, now a woman with silver hair and horn-rimmed glasses, tablet in hand. Welcome back, Ellison said. Maya, this is Dr. Elaine Rogers, corporate social equity consultant. She's advising us on structural change. Maya shook her hand. I've listened to your episode 3 times, Dr. Rogers said. The clarity in your story, it's rare. You didn't blame, but you didn't soften the truth either. Maya sat down. I didn't know what else to do. Ryder spoke up. You told the truth. Most people never do it that loud. Ellison leaned forward. We'd like to propose something new. Something bigger than a policy memo or a quiet apology. He slid a document across the table. We're launching an internal equity initiative company, wide. And we want your voice at the center of it. You'd lead employee narratives, build the platform, help guide workshops for leadership teams. We'll make sure you're trained, compensated, Respected. Maya looked down at the paper. She wasn't sure what to feel. There was excitement, yes, but also hesitation. "I'm a mechanic," she said finally. "I fix things. With my hands, with bolts and torque wrenches. I'm not trained to do all this." Dr. Rogers smiled. "And yet here you are." Ellison folded his hands. "The truth is, Maya, you fixed something more important than a motorcycle. You shifted the air in an entire organization. You made us look at what we refuse to see. That's a mechanic's instinct, knowing where the tension is and how to release it." She looked at him for a long moment. "I didn't plan any of this. I didn't think about justice or power. I just saw someone who needed help, so I helped. And they punished you for it," Ryder said. "But now, you're the one writing the next chapter." Maya leaned back in the chair. Her voice was quiet, but firm. "I'm not doing this unless it means something. Unless it touches the floor workers, the shop kids, the women who keep their heads down because they're scared to speak." Dr. Rogers nodded. "That's exactly why we're asking you." Maya looked down at the paper again and signed. The next week was a whirlwind. She split her time between the Bronx garage and headquarters. In the morning, she ran diagnostics and rebuilt alternators. In the afternoons, she sat in front of a microphone and recorded stories. Not just her own, but others, too. She interviewed a young Latina in Phoenix who was denied promotion because her boss said she smiled too much. An older technician in New Jersey who had trained 3 men who all got promoted ahead of him. A trans employee in Chicago who had to use a different locker room for 2 years because management didn't want complaints. She wove their voices together, raw and unscripted, and turned them into a series called Under the Hood. The first episode aired on Autopro's internal network. Every shop was required to listen during staff meetings. She didn't expect much, but then the comments started flooding in. From Alabama, "I never saw it this way. Thank you." From Portland, "You spoke what I've been thinking for years." From inside her own Bronx garage, Jonas came up to her afterward. "I didn't know about your mom, or the stuff you put up with before. I saw you as quiet, not strong." Maya looked at him. "Quiet is not the opposite of strong, Jonas. Sometimes, it's the beginning of strong." He nodded, and this time, there was no sarcasm. Just respect. Later that week, she received an anonymous envelope at her locker. No note, just a single spark plug inside. On the base, someone had scratched the words, "I see you now." She held it in her palm for a long time. In a garage that once erased her, her presence was now carved into the steel, and it had only just begun. On a cold Monday morning, the Bronx garage was quieter than usual. The usual soundscape metal clinks, muffled laughter, half-hearted insults was strangely absent. Maya stepped through the bay doors, her boots echoing on the stained concrete. Her eyes scanned the room. Most of the crew was already there, but everyone was moving slower, more watchful, not toward her, but toward something bigger than all of them. She knew why. That morning, episode 3 of Under the Hood had dropped. This one was personal. In the episode, Maya didn't just tell another worker's story. She told her own. The one no one had asked to hear when she got fired. The one everyone pretended wasn't their business. She spoke clearly, calmly, not with rage, but with a weight that only experience could carry. "I didn't scream. I didn't slam tools. I just fixed his bike. I got fired for it. And everyone watched it happen. So this episode, this isn't about a lesson. It's a mirror for those who saw it and said nothing." Oh, when the garage's speaker system quietly played the audio during the morning briefing, company policy now for all branches, no one looked her in the eye. But they listened. After the meeting, Jonas walked beside her in silence for a few steps, before finally saying, "I remember that day. I told myself it wasn't my place, that you had it handled. You and everyone else," Maya replied, not with anger, but honesty. Jonas swallowed. "I was wrong." She gave a short nod and kept walking. Mid-morning, while Maya was reassembling a transmission, her work phone buzzed. It was from Isaac Ellison's assistant. Subject, urgent. Message, "Please come to HQ this afternoon. We need your voice in this." She texted back, "I'll be there by 3. That afternoon, she walked into a different kind of room. Not the podcast studio, not the CEO's office. This time, it was the boardroom. 8 people sat at the long glass table: executives, HR heads, PR strategists, all in suits, most white, all older than her. They stood when she entered, a formality that felt both stiff and symbolic. Ellison greeted her with a firm nod. "Maya, thank you for coming." One of the men gray suit, sharp jaw jumped in. "We've been reviewing the internal response to your series. It's powerful, very powerful. But," another woman added quickly, "there's concern about brand image, public exposure. You understand." Maya sat down, folding her hands calmly. "What exactly is the concern?" The woman hesitated. "There are whispers. Media might pick it up. Shareholders are asking if we plan to issue a public statement." "So you want to shut it down?" Maya said flatly. "No," Ellison said, eyes firm. "But we want to get ahead of it, guide the message." A third voice chimed in, someone from legal. "We'd like to offer you a formal spokesperson role. Keep the story within our channels. Controlled messaging. Scripted engagements." "Oh," Maya looked at the man. His tie was too tight, his words too clean. "You want to pay me to make it pretty?" Silence. She exhaled slowly. "Let me be clear. This didn't start because I wanted a microphone. It started because no one would look me in the eye after they watched me get erased." "Maya," Ellison said, gentler now, "you're not being erased anymore." She met his gaze, unwavering. "Then don't ask me to act like it didn't happen." He nodded slowly, respect blooming in the lines around his eyes. "If we're doing this," Maya continued, turning back to the table, "we're doing it real. That means unscripted episodes. It means involving more workers. It means accountability, not curated sound bites." The woman in HR shifted uncomfortably. "That's risky." "So is silence," Maya replied. There it was, the quiet that follows truth. Finally, the woman, after a long pause, nodded. "Okay." 3 days later, Maya stood in front of a camera crew at AutoPro HQ, but not as a brand face, as a human being. The new campaign, titled "This Is Us, Unfiltered," would feature real employees across departments: mechanics, clerks, janitors, speaking about respect, race, gender, and the unspoken rules they'd survived. Maya's episode would be the first. Before they started rolling, the producer asked her, "Any script you want us to follow?" Maya smiled, subtle. "I already lived the script, just press record." When the red light blinked on, she began. "I don't think I'm brave. I think I got tired. Tired of fixing things no one wanted to admit were broken. Tired of working twice as hard for half the credit. Tired of swallowing silence." She paused. "You don't need a title to tell the truth. You need courage and a mic." The episode aired company-wide the following Monday. Emails flooded HR, not with outrage, but with relief. People finally felt seen. In the Bronx garage, someone pinned Maya's quote above the break room sink in bold Sharpie: "Don't mistake silence for consent." Later that week, as Maya was packing up to leave the garage, Kim approached her. Not with paperwork, not with attitude, just a quiet voice. "I didn't say anything the day you were fired," she said. "I should have. I see that now." Maya looked at her for a moment, then gave a soft nod. "You see me now. That's a start." And as she walked out into the dusk air, her boots steady on the pavement, she realized something. She hadn't set out to lead a movement. She just refused to stay invisible. And now, no one could unsee her again. The next few weeks unfolded like a slow revolution, quiet, steady, undeniable. Across AutoPro's branches, things began to shift. A garage manager in Dallas held his first team-wide listening session and ended it in tears. A young woman in Florida sent Maya a voicemail thanking her for showing us we don't have to shrink ourselves to stay employed. Even at Maya's own Bronx shop, the walls were listening now, but Maya didn't let the spotlight slow her hands. She still showed up every morning in grease-streaked coveralls. She still pulled engines, checked diagnostics, and taught younger techs how to find the real problem before it became a costly one. But now, when she spoke, people didn't glance away. They leaned in. One evening, after a long shift, she stayed behind in Bay 2 to finish a stubborn brake line on a Civic. Jonas hovered nearby, pretending to organize the socket drawer. "You ever think about running your own shop?" he asked, not looking up. Maya laughed under her breath. "Why?" So I can deal with permits and rent and payroll headaches? I'm serious, he said, glancing over. You've got something. Leadership. The kind people listen to. Even the hard-headed ones like me. She didn't respond immediately. The thought had flickered before. In college. In trade school. Even in the silence between layoffs. But dreams didn't survive long when you were just trying to make it to payday. That night, as she walked home, the question clung to her boots. At the apartment, her mother was already asleep. Maya poured herself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table. The spark plug from weeks ago, the one someone had anonymously given her, still sat by the window. She picked it up, rolled it between her fingers, and stared at the faint words scratched into the metal. I see you now. What would it mean to build something from the ground up, not just for herself, but for women like her? Mechanics with fire in their chest, but no one willing to hand them the keys. The next morning, she brought it up to Ryder over coffee. You ever think about helping open a shop? She asked casually. He paused mid-sip. Your own? Not just mine, she said. A place for women. For people who get dismissed before they even turn a wrench. A place where being underestimated isn't the first thing that happens. Ryder's face broke into a slow grin. Now that sounds like trouble I'd invest in. He pulled out a napkin and scribbled something on it. There's an old garage in East Tremont. Shut down since the pandemic. Good bones. Solid foundation. Owners looking to sell. Maya looked down at the napkin. No logo. No business plan. Just a location and a glimmer. A week later, they walked through the space together. The garage was dusty, full of spiderwebs and broken lift arms. But Maya saw more. She saw light filtering through the high windows. She saw the mural she would paint on the back wall, women, with torque wrenches and safety glasses. She saw bays that wouldn't need permission slips to breathe. They bought the place 2 weeks later. Maya used her corporate bonus, and Ryder chipped in the rest. AutoPro didn't fight her leaving. In fact, Ellison offered to match a portion of her seed funding on one condition. Maya would continue consulting on company culture, recording quarterly episodes of Under the Hood, and training regional leads on equity practices. She agreed, and then she got to work. The new shop opened under the name Mitchell Motors. Not fancy, not trying too hard, just hers. The sign was welded by hand, Maya insisted. No neon, just raw steel, curved at the edges. Jonas asked to join her team on day one. Kim sent flowers with a note. For the first boss I ever wanted to be honest with. At the grand opening, Maya stood in front of a crowd of community members, friends, former co-workers, and news crews. She wore her oil-stained boots and a fresh navy jumpsuit, her name patch stitched in white thread. This isn't just a garage, she told the crowd. It's a workshop for possibility. A place where no one gets fired for doing the right thing. Where people are seen not by what they wear or where they're from, but by how they show up when it counts. Applause followed, but it was the quiet afterward that stayed with her. That moment where people didn't just clap, they nodded. Because they understood. A week into opening, a young black girl named Tessa came by with her older brother. She stood by the tool rack, wide-eyed, watching Maya work. You want to try? Maya asked her, holding out a torque wrench. Tessa nodded quickly. Her brother chuckled. She's been obsessed with engines since she could walk. Maya knelt beside her, showed her how to feel the tension, how to listen to the metal speak when something was wrong. Don't let anyone tell you your hands weren't meant for this, Maya whispered. Tessa beamed. Later that night, Maya sat on the bench outside the shop, looking up at the sign under the streetlight glow. Mitchell Motors, where skill speaks louder than stereotypes. The words weren't painted. They were etched into the wall by hand. Permanence, not polish. She leaned back, closed her eyes for a moment, and breathed in deep. She had built this, not to be thanked, but so no one else would have to feel invisible ever again. Maya stood at the back of the shop, arms crossed, watching the quiet hum of work in motion. It was her favorite time of day, not when the crowds came in, but when the shop exhaled. Jonas was replacing a fuel pump. Tessa, now shadowing part-time after school, was wiping down tools with the kind of care Maya had only seen in seasoned techs. Even Ryder, despite his grumbling knees, was crawling under a vintage Impala, swearing softly at a rusted bolt. Feels different here, a voice said behind her. It was Ellison. He had arrived unannounced, dressed in casual clothes instead of his usual suit, holding a box of donuts like he didn't know what else to bring. "Didn't expect you," Maya said. Not coldly, but not warm either. "I figured that," he admitted. "Thought I'd stop by. See for myself." She gestured toward the open bay. "Well, there it is. It's not flashy, but it works." He stepped forward, watching Tessa for a moment. "That girl reminds me of you. Sharp eyes, eager hands. She reminds me of what I didn't have," Maya said quietly. "A place to fail and still be welcomed back the next day." Ellison nodded. "I came to apologize. Not for firing you, that decision was protocol, but for how long it took me to see that protocol was the problem." Maya didn't speak at first. She just stared at a faded poster on the wall she had found in the garage's back room and decided to keep. It showed Rosie the Riveter, but someone had scribbled over her arm with engine grease, making her sleeve look like a mechanic's coverall. Underneath it, someone had written, "We still can." "You could do more," Maya said at last. "Your board listens to you. You could push for hiring pipelines, equity audits, pay transparency." Ellison smiled faintly. "You sound like someone who should be on the board." She arched an eyebrow. "I'm not for sale, Mr. Ellison." "No," he said, "but your voice is worth amplifying." They stood in silence for a beat longer. Then he placed the box of donuts on the counter and left. Later that day, Maya found a small envelope tucked inside the box. No money, no offer letter, just a note. "Sometimes leadership means getting out of the way. Ellison." That night, Maya stayed late after everyone left. She wandered through each bay, her fingers grazing tool benches and air compressors, letting the quiet fill the space. She stopped at Bay 3, where her father's wrenchone of the few things she'd kept after his passing hung on the wall. She touched it gently, feeling the worn handle, remembering how he used to tell her, "Every good mechanic knows when to tighten and when to let go." The next morning brought rain. It was the kind of downpour that flooded gutters and made headlights blur like watercolor. But the shop stayed busy. In fact, around noon, a small crowd gathered outside under umbrellas. Maya peeked out and frowned. There were camera crews, a few journalists, and to her surprise, a couple members of the city council. Ryder rushed in. "You're gonna want to see this." On cue, a police escort pulled up. Out stepped Shonda Price, the city's commissioner for vocational equity. She shook off her coat and walked straight up to Maya with a grin. "Heard this was the place where dignity got rebuilt with socket wrenches," Shonda said, extending her hand. Maya, taken aback, shook it. We just fix cars." No," Shonda said, glancing around. "You fixed a whole system's silence." As cameras clicked, Shonda made an announcement. The city would be launching a partnership program called Hands Forward, offering grants and support to women-led mechanical trade businesses. Maya's shop would be its first flagship mentor site. Maya's jaw tightened, eyes stinging. She wasn't the crying type. But this felt like gravity shifting just a little. After the press left and the last reporter folded their tripod, Maya sat outside the shop again, her boots propped on an overturned oil bucket. Tessa came out, holding 2 sodas. "You really gonna teach all those new girls?" the teenager asked. "If they're ready to work," Maya said. Tessa hesitated, then asked, "Do you think I could someday run my own shop?" Maya looked at her, dead serious. "If you want it, you'll build it, and I'll be right there to make sure no one takes it from you." Tessa beamed and took a seat beside her, kicking at a loose pebble with her sneaker. In the distance, thunder rumbled, but inside the shop, laughter echoed off the walls deep, real, belonging. And somewhere between the grease, the gumption, and the grit, Maya realized something. It wasn't just about proving herself anymore. It was about creating a world where no one like her would have to. It was nearly dusk when the last customer of the day rolled out of the shop. The air inside smelled of motor oil and old vinyl, tinged with the fading sweetness of the donuts Ellison had left. Maya sat at her desk in the small office at the back, fingers brushing over a stack of new resumes from young women across the city, names she didn't recognize yet, but already cared about. Her hands were rough, her back ached, and still, she smiled. The door creaked open. It was Ryder, his knuckles scarred, holding 2 paper cups of coffee like he was offering truce after a long war. "You look like someone who could use this," he said, placing one cup in front of her. Maya took it with a nod. Thanks. He hesitated before sitting in the cracked vinyl chair across from her. You know, back when you first walked in here, I didn't think you'd last a week. She didn't look up. I know. But then I watched you rebuild a carburetor like it was a jigsaw puzzle. No fuss. Just focus. He took a sip. I've been wrong a lot in my life, but I'm glad I was wrong about you. Maya finally looked up. Ryder wasn't sentimental, but tonight his voice carried the weight of something unspoken in apology, a passing of the torch, maybe even pride. I didn't want to take over, she said softly. I just wanted a place to belong. He chuckled. You didn't take over, Maya. You built something. Outside, the shop's lights flickered on one by one, casting a warm glow across the pavement. Tessa could be seen laughing with another apprentice near the tool station. They were young, loud, and full of the kind of energy that made Maya feel hopeful. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Shonda Price's office. The mayor's office has officially approved the expansion. You're scheduled to speak at City Hall next Thursday. Congratulations, Maya. She stared at it for a moment. City Hall. She hadn't even imagined that as part of her journey. But then again, none of this had been part of the plan. You ever get scared? She asked Ryder suddenly. He raised a brow. You think I got these white hairs from restful sleep? Maya laughed. I mean now. Of failing. Of messing up when people are watching. He leaned forward, his tone serious. Always. But that's what means you're doing something that matters. Later that week, Maya stood before the city council, the bright lights overhead making her sweat through her blazer. Cameras clicked. Faces watched. She cleared her throat. I'm not a politician, she began, her voice steady but low. I'm a mechanic. My hands know bolts and gaskets better than microphones. But I know what it means to be ignored, to be underestimated, and I know how powerful it is when someone finally says, I see you. And she looked out into the crowd and spotted familiar faces. Tessa, sitting in the second row. Ryder, in his best shirt, looking uncomfortable but proud. Even Ellison, standing in the back, silent but unmistakably present. We don't fix broken systems with speeches, she continued. We fix them by giving people the tools, the space, and the belief that they can build their own engines. That's what my shop became. That's what this city can become. The applause that followed wasn't thunderous. It was deep, sincere, the kind that came from people who understood what it cost her to stand there. After the event, as the room emptied, a woman approached Hera Stranger, older, with hands weathered from work. My granddaughter wants to be a welder, the woman said. She didn't think she could, but then she read about you. Maya blinked. Her throat tightened. Tell her she can come by the shop any time. We'll find her a place. Oh. That night, back at the garage, Maya found herself alone. The bays were dark, the air quiet. She sat in the same corner where she used to clean tools as an apprentice, before anyone knew her name. She pulled out a small tin from her locker, a dented box filled with notes, tokens, and scraps from her journey. At the bottom was an old photo of her father, grease on his face, a proud smile. I did it, Daddy, she whispered, and I didn't do it alone. A gust of wind rattled the door. She stood and walked toward it, flipping the lock and shutting the world out for the night. Outside, the city buzzed, but inside the garage, all was still. Not silent, just content. And that's the kind of victory Maya Williams had spent her whole life chasing. Not loud, not flashy, just real, just hers.